Hey everyone. Today I'm going to be doing a bit of a different video. I love talking about Numemon. Numemon is my favorite deck in this format right now, and I think it's one of the best, if not the best deck. I'll hang my hat and say it is the best deck of the format. It got 4th place at the most recent tournament last weekend, and I think that the list was super interesting. And it really, I think, was emblematic of the fact that Numemon lists can be very different between players. So I kind of wanted to go over all of the different bases, as well as a bunch of the different tech cards that I personally have seen or tested with, as well as what you guys can probably expect to see and how they kind of work out in the deck. And hopefully, going through this, you'll be able to figure out, based off of the base your opponent's playing or the cards that you kind of see, what cards you're more likely to expect going forward. So, starting off with the eggs, we're going to start off with the best base, in my opinion, the black base. We have 4 Numemon of some variety. This Digimon says that, during your turn, once per turn, whenever one of your other Digimon digivolves, you draw a card. This worked really well, because typically your opponent will digivolve into an Ukomon or a Floodgate in the back, or some kind of value-gating Digimon. And their idea is to keep it there, and then they will hard play a Numemon on their first turn. Either passing, or if they have memory still to go, they'll then digivolve into a Monzaemon. Assuming that they pass, though, once you pass back, if their Numemon is still there, they will promote, and then they will digivolve on top of the Numemon, getting the draw off the Sunamon. And the idea is that you can get consistent draws while getting some value from your rookies, where typically you will not be incentivized to digivolve on top of your rookies. The black base, though, however, does let you at least it does let you digivolve on top of your rookies, whereas the other bases do not. Even though, in my opinion, I think it has a little bit weaker of draw power compared to some of the other bases. But the benefit of being able to digivolve does come up. One of the other 2 common eggs is the 5th egg. Most of these will all be playing 5 eggs, if not all of these bases, because Ukomon is a really strong card, but we'll get to that. One of the more common eggs that you'll see as their 5th egg is Tokomon. On deletion, if it's your opponent's turn, draw 1. Or the Kyokyomon, which is opponent's turn, once per turn. When opponent's Digimon becomes unsuspended, draw 1. The Tokomon is typically a safer egg because realistically, your opponent wants to delete your rookies for a multitude of reasons, not just for taking checks off the board, but also because a lot of your rookies are either floodgates or, as mentioned before, value-generating rookies. The Kyokyomon can proc multiple times, which is the allure there, but your rookies are a little bit weaker, so they're easier to get rid of. But should this proc more than once, or even once, the value that you get from this egg is typically better, but this one is typically safer. Moving on to the purple base of Digimon, you run some combination of these 3 eggs. The Demi-Marymon from BT3, on deletion, draw 1, then trash 1. The BT6 Sunamon, when you trash a card in your hand using one of your effects, trigger draw 1. And Sunamon, when attacking, if you have 6 or fewer cards in hand, draw 1. All 3 of these eggs have their merits, and I think it comes down to the types of level 3s that you're playing in the purple base. You'll be playing some amount of floodgates, as each of the bases will be, and the purple base Digimon are more inclined and focused on drawing cards, which is really nice for facilitating your main game plan. The Demi-Marymon is good if you just want to get like a lot of early checks in really quickly and you don't care about your Digimon living. This is really nice against decks like Leviamon, who care how many Digimon you have in play. The Sunamon synergizes really well with a lot of your main game plan, because you do trash a lot of cards over the course of your turn, so you'll probably be able to proc this at least once every turn. And then the other Sunamon is nice for a little bit, again, of the aggressive game plan if your rookie ends up not dying, but this one I think is a little bit weaker than the Demi-Marymon, purely because of the fact that you can have over 6 in your hand pretty quickly. In this deck. There are scenarios where you will run out of cards really quickly, and I've had like 2 to 3 cards in hand at a time, where the Sunamon does get its value from, but typically, especially early on, you will not be making too many net negative plays when it comes to drawing cards. And then finally, the last base we have available to us is the red base. The red base involves 4 Koromon, When a card is removed from your opponent's security attack, draw 1 during your turn only, once per turn. And then either the Digimon, when attacking, once per turn, the Digimon has Guildmon, Growlmon, or Gallantmon in name, draw 1. This one is a lot more stringent because we only, in the red base, I've only seen people play one set of Guildmons, which we'll go over in a little bit, or the Gurimon. This one's also very stringent. When one of your effects places a Digivolution card under the Digimon, draw 1. The problem with this egg is that, unlike other decks that would be using it, you will not be able to proc its effect every turn, because the things that you'll be placing underneath it are either Satsuki's, which is good, because then you can proc it every turn, but it requires you to see them, or your protoforms. The problem with Satsuki's is that they can only be placed underneath, I believe it's Monzimon, Numemon, or Digipolice, and Gurimon and the Digimon that will be on top of Gurimon will never fall into that category, unless you find some weird way, like Chimeramon placing the Gurimon underneath. I think that can happen, and then getting value off of it there, but I think that's the only way that Satsuki would work. And then Protoform, but you can't really Digivolve using it, so this card usually kind of falls flat. So in my opinion, I've seen and personally played with only the Koromons and the Gigimons. The Gigimon is a bit unfortunate though, because it is, again, specific only to the Guilmon line. I think the red base has the most consistent draw with the Koromons, but it has the worst 5th egg with the GG. Moving on to the level 3s, we have a bunch of Digimon to kind of go over. We'll kind of explain what's going on. We're going to go ahead and start with the Chumon. Level 3, all turns your opponent can't gain memory other than by tamer effects. This card is very strong right now. It hurts Leviamon a lot when they try to play Digimon to your field. If you can just play this Chumon and they can't Digivolve into a Leviamon afterwards, it's very, very strong. Or Digivolve into a Leviamon in order to save their inheritance. It's very, very strong. Works really well against Lugamon, because if they can't keep turn going through their whole line and gain memory off of the effects, they will have to end up either taking a less OTK style plays and kind of trying to get value, or pushing out a security with the red-purple Lugamon to try and kill, or even using a Hell Luga on a Chumon, which feels pretty poor most of the time. I think this card is very, very strong. And luckily, the purple base also has a memory blocker, but the red base does not. Going forward, next we have the Chikurimon. There are 2 Chikurimon that you can play in this deck. The first one is the Security Chikurimon that Digivolves after battle. If this is hit into Security, it feels exceptionally well. And the other Chikurimon makes it that way they can't reduce play costs. This helps you against Blue Flare or against straight Death Exes. I think Blue Flare is the more noticeable matchup that this actually hits. Death Exes are prominent and people are playing them, but I don't think they're actually super strong against Numemon, good Numemon players, as long as they're cognizant of what's going on around them and what they need to play around. Following next, we also have another security Digimon. It is a security Dorumon. This one in turn acts as a draw 1 or a playing out of one of your black rookies or one of your Numemon, which in turn either gives you huge value and another Numemon to play with, or just another swing to kind of continue going on from there. And in worst case scenario, it just adds itself to hand, as well as adds the the other card to hand, which also is never really too bad. But again, this one and the Chikurimon have to be in security to actually matter. These ones feel really bad outside of security more so, and I'm not sure if it's the mental toll of knowing that this card is in your hand rather than in security, so it makes it feel worse, and that's unknown. Up next, we've got the Structure Deck 15 Agumon. Start of main phase, if your opponent has a Digimon, gain 1 memory. When an attack target is switched, gain 1 memory. This card is a Ukumon at home in a way. Gaining that 1 memory in the Numemon decks actually is pretty important. It allows them kind of get closer to their thresholds of 2 and 3. And getting to those thresholds mean that they can make a larger play rather than just passing on a Numemon or on a Monzimon, which feels good. And then all turns when an attack target is switched, gain 1 memory. This can come up loosely because a lot of your Digimon do gain blocker, but overall I've experienced very little of this actually happening, because it's already rare when you want to Digivolve on top of one of your level 3s. A little less also having that level 3 be able to block consistently. And then finally, the last black Digimon is the Agumon X Antibody. This is usually played in tandem with the Agumon from the structure deck. On play, when Digivolving, roll the top 3 cards of your deck, add 1 card with Greymon or X Antibody and its name and 1 black Tamer card among them to your hand. Place the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order. This is usually played with the 2 Digipolice Tamers, the Greymons, and that just it lets you search out your Nume X's, your Monzai X's, the Protoforms if you're playing them, and either of your Tamers. Which is nice. The Inheritable doesn't do anything for the deck, unfortunately, but the searching power and just getting like a little bit of extra draw here and there does feel really good. Moving on to the purple base, we've got Fastcomon. On deletion, draw 1, then trash 1 card. At the end of your opponent's turn, draw 1, then trash 1. You'll never really be getting the Inheritable. So the Inheritable doesn't matter too much outside of black decks. So for the red and the purple decks going forward, we will not mention the Inheritable. I haven't found any good purple level 4s that we really want to be using in the deck. So just keep that in mind going forward. The On Deletion, draw 1, the trash 1 is nice. Again, it synergizes really well with the Numemon, and it lets you play very, very aggressive. So the idea is just to constantly swing with your rookies, have them die into your opponent's security, and then plus off of them. It's pretty simple. It's just how purple typically plays, so there's not much to be said there. Other cards include like the Tapermon, which are, just fast go. But again, the Gazimon, which is the memory blocker, as mentioned with the Chumon, it has the same utility as the Chumon, so it's both just really strong. Labramon, on play, draw 1, then trash 1 card from your hand. There are a couple purple level 3s that kind of fit this scenario. They are okay. I personally wouldn't play them too much, but if you're really stressed for draw, you can kind of try and go into like a purple rookie rush kind of angle. The Psychomon falls into the same category as the Chikurimon, and then Gabumon falls into the same category as the Agumon. Some people have been trying to run the Gabumon X Antibody, but because we're not running the whole Garurumon line, I don't think it's actually worth it too much. It can double hit into your X Antibodies, but realistically, it's only a 1 of, and it's probably worth running if you're running the Gabumons, actually. Now that I think about it a little more, I would, if you're running the 4 Gabumons in your purple base, I would run 1 of the Gabu X's as well. Moving on to the red rookies, we've got Gatsumon. Players can't play Digimon by effects. This does hurt you a lot, but it also synergizes really well into a lot of the current matchups you'll be facing against, such as other Numemon players or Leviamon players. Being able to Monzai X, playing out a Digimon with this effect, feels really strong, because then you can delete a stack of your Numemon player and they won't be able to delete something. I think the downside of this compared to Pillowmon, a Digimon with the exact same effect, is the situation where you actually can't Digivolve on top of it at all, whereas at least with Pillowmon, depending on the ratios that you're running, you have a chance to Digivolve on top of it, so you just have to hope that it dies into security, or that your opponent won't be able to make use of it going forward when facing you, as well as depending on the opponent you're running against, this card is actually purely hurtful and will not ever help you in the slightest. Next up, we've got Muchomon. Muchomon, when one of your red Digimon attacks a player, draw 1. Does not have to check security, it just has to attack, which is really nice. It's a super, super strong card, and I think this card is the only reason why you should ever really run the red base at all. Up next is the Guilmon. When attacking, trigger, draw 1. So in the ideal scenario, if you have a Muchomon and a GG underneath this will net you 3 cards, which feels really, really nice. And so I think this one and the purple base are much more focused on like kind of rushing your opponent down when it comes to trying to constantly swing in with your rookies, compared to the black base, which I think tries to get a bit more value out of their rookies consistently. Next up, we have Huckmon. It's just another security Digimon, kind of falls into the same category as the Chikuri and the Doru, but this one does delete a 4K or less Digimon, and then if it doesn't, you draw 1 and then add it to hand. So it is similar to Numemon in the way that it is a minimum draw one, maybe plus. Whereas this one, the Numemon plays out a Digimon, this one deletes a Digimon minimum or draws one and then adds to hand. And then finally, the last red rookie we have available to us is the All Turns can't reduce play cost. It falls into the same camp as the Chikuri and the Psychomon. Again, I think this effect is fine. I just personally don't think it's actually that impactful in the current meta. And the last two rookies we have here, we'll go ahead and leave Ukamon for last. We'll do Pillowmon. Again, it falls into the same category as the Gatsumon. I've seen players tuck this into the black and the purple variants at like a 1 or 2 of, just so that way they can kind of cheat it out and get value of it and then kind of get rid of it afterwards. And the final rookie that we have available to us is the Ukamon. For those of you who don't know, this is one of the best cards in the deck. Is exceptionally strong, as well as every variant will be running 4 copies of this Digimon. So it's your turn, once per turn. When one of your Digimon moves from the breeding area onto the battle area, you may hatch in the breeding area, then gain 1 memory. I think this card synergizes a lot better with the black version of the deck, the black base of the deck specifically, compared to the purple or the red bases. Just because keeping your Ukamons alive and getting multiple procs off of its effect is exceptionally strong, and in fact fairly game winning. So keep that in mind going forward. It allows you to be a lot more aggressive, as well as, again, get you to those cutoff points a lot quicker. And I think that's all I really need to mention about the eggs and the rookies when it comes to why they're played or what people kind of want to do with them and the way that the bases kind of work. I will say here and now, depending on the base, your opponent will run anywhere from 11 to 13 rookies pretty consistently. So keep that in mind. Minimum of them will be 4 Ukamon, and then usually 4 of the best rookie they have available to them. So it's like usually like Muchomon for like red, or it's like the Fascomon for the purple, and then for the black one, it's like there's a lot of like kind of okay rookies. It's gonna be some amount of the Agumon X, and Shumon typically. But there are still players that are playing the other level 3s, so it's good to keep that in mind going forward, especially if you have a Death X in hand and you want to play them out. Every variant of the deck will have some way, or will at least have the possibility of having some way to stop you from playing it for cheap. Moving on to the level 4s, level 5s, 6s, and 7s. We're going to go ahead and start off nice and sweet. We got Jerrymon, which is the on-play, trashing 1 card with Numemon, Sukamon, Nanimon, or Enamon in its name, draw 2. The only one we care about is the fact that it mentions Numemon, and then this name of this card is also treated as Numemon. So it's not, from my understanding, it's not Jerrymon Numemon, it's Jerrymon or Numemon, meaning that it can fit the requirements for specific evolutions or cards that specifically mention Numemon, which is very nice and very convenient. Next up, we have the BT14 Numemon, the one that is a Digipolice as well. On play, when Digivolving, by placing 1 Satsuki from your hand as its Digimon's bottom Digivolution card, give 1 of your Digimon Rush for the turn. Notice how it says it doesn't specify itself, so if this Digimon is played out, you can give 1 of your other Digimon Rush, or if you Digivolve for 2 on top of 1 of your rookies, then place a Satsuki underneath it, you can then give 1 of your other Digimon Rush, so this way this one can still swing in, but you get the effect of the rush for only 2 rather than 3. Its inheritable is one of the better inheritables in the deck. It is just flat blocker, which comes up pretty consistently, depending on the version of the list. I think the smaller go wide lists that play anywhere from like 14 to 16 of the base Numemons don't care too much as much about the inheritable. They more so care about the fact that Satsuki gives jamming as well as memory. And is a way to cheat out a win from your opponent. Up next, we have... we're going to go ahead and save Numemon X Antibody for last. Up next, we have Jerrymon, on play, on deletion, by trashing 1 card with Numemon or Sukamon in its name in your hand. One of your opponent's Digimon gains carry attack -1 until the end of their turn. Depending on their list, this can synergize with their Venusmon, as well as when attacking, one of your opponent's Digimon gains carry attack -1 until the end of their turn as an inheritable, which again synergizes very well with Numemon or with the Venusmon, if you should be playing that in your deck. In the rules text, this card is also treated as Numemon, so it falls into the same category as the previous Jerrymon, where it is treated as specifically Numemon for any cards that specifically need Numemon. I think this card is okay. I've seen players run it at 1 or 2. I personally don't run it. I think it's kind of slow and it trashes Numemon's in name, and it doesn't give you much value out of it other than slowing your opponent down a little bit. I think that in this deck we have enough good Numemons that we don't need to be playing something like this. However, it is good to keep in mind this inheritable, because this inheritable is very strong depending on the list and depending on the deck that you're playing currently against the Numemon player. And it's not so uncommon that you shouldn't expect to potentially see it in the list. The final regular Numemon is the RB1 Numemon. On deletion, roll the top 3 cards of your deck. Add 1 card with Monzaemon in its name and 1 card with Numemon in its name among them to your hand. Place the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order. And then the inheritable is opponent's turn. While this Digimon has Monzaemon or Numemon in its name, it gains blocker. The inheritable is fine. I think it comes up pretty consistently because most of your end board will be with a Monzaemon or a Numemon with this underneath it. However, it's not that it's not as good as the other Numemon that gives blocker just generically, obviously, because then your Shines, or your Quartz, or your Venuses, or any of your other tech cards that you're deciding to play will not have blocker off of this inheritable. I think this on deletion effect, I undervalued it when I first started playing with it, but it comes up a lot, specifically against decks like Leviamon or like against Ruin Mode or against Devas, as ways to at least still be getting value out of your bodies rather than just letting them die, and being able to consistently get cards into your hand, refilling your resources, which feels really, really good. So those are the level 4s that you can expect to see some combination of. Usually, oh, right. My apologies. I forgot the best level 4 in the room right now. We have Numemon X Antibody. Digivolve for 4. Digivolve for level 4 with Numemon in name without X Antibody trait. So you can't Digivolve on top of this guy, but you can Digivolve on top of all of your other level 4s. All turns while this Digimon has Numemon or X Antibody in its Digivolution sources, it gains on deletion. You may play 1 Digimon card with Numemon in its name from your trash without paying the cost. That will include this Digimon or any of your Platinums or any of your Cherries or anything kind of going forward, as long as they mention Numemon in their name. Which is a really good effect and is good for comboing, but the inheritable I think is even better, which is the exact same effect, but the only stipulation that's different is the fact that you don't need a Numemon or X Antibody in the sources. It gets rid of all of the requirements to actually use the effect, so being able to place it immediately underneath your Monzaemon after hard playing them gives them the float into one of your other Numemon, which feels really, really strong, and it's really, really good. You should always expect 4 Nume X's, 4 Jerrymon, and then some combination of BT14 and RB1 Numemon. Usually like 4 and 1, or 3 and 2, or 3 and 3, or 2 and 2, some combination of those 4. Up next, we have the level 5s, starting off with one of the weaker level 5s in my opinion. People really, really like this card a lot. I personally have not experienced a lot of success with it. I think it's kind of meh, but we'll go over why I think that and what's going on here. So the War Monzaemon is a BT15 card, most recently released. On play or when Digivolving, by trashing 1 card with Numemon in its name in your hand, or the Digimon's Digivolution sources, Digivolve one of your opponent's Digimon. It's a very strong effect. The Digivolution is very, very good. And then on play, by placing 1 card with Numemon in its name from your trash as the Digimon Digivolution sources at the bottom card, until the end of your opponent's turn, none of their Digimon with play cost 5 or less can attack players. I think that's a really good effect against super aggro decks, and can even be good against other Numemon players, depending on the kind of list they play. I tend to play a bit more of a top-end focused Numemon deck, where I can rookie rush my opponent down and kind of get like insane values out of going there, but I tend to try and keep my rookies alive to slow my opponent down while I'm speeding up and through level 4s straight into 6s or getting really powerful 5s going. I think that the fact that it costs 7, it doesn't recoup any memory, feels bad. And if you play it on your opponent's turn, depending on the deck that your opponent's on, it may not come up as much. as stealing 2 memory from your opponent, which we'll kind of go over in a second. I think it's fine. I think there are certain matchups where it feels fucking insane. I will not disregard the fact that certain matchups, the Digivolve 1 for free is absolutely game winning, but a lot of times still I'm not very happy with it. I think that if it didn't trash the Numemon, and it only placed, it was just a regular effect, I think I would appreciate it a lot more. Up next, we'll get to the Numemons in a second. We'll kind of go over how insane they are. But other unique techs include the Numemon Ace and the Numemon Ace. Both of these can blast Digivolve on top of your RB1 Numemon, which feels really, really nice, and can be really strong. And what I mean by that is the fact that Numemon is consistent security recovery. Once per turn, when a card is removed from your opponent's security stack, if you have 3 of your security cards, removed from your security stack if you have 3 of your security cards, recover 1, which is really nice. And then on play, when digivolving by trashing the top or bottom card of your security stack, one of your opponent's Digimon get minus 6k DP until the end of the turn. And then the Magna Angemon is very similar. In effect, it's on play when digivolving. If you have 5 or fewer security cards, recover 1. Then for the turn, return one of your. For the turn, one of your opponent's Digimon get minus 1k DP for each card in your security stack. So typically, when this comes out, it'll be anywhere from 4 to 6k DP minus, which is really, really nice. I think these cards are surprisingly impactful, and I'll kind of explain why I believe that. Because they're both 4 cost level 5s. They can get the value off of the Numemon here by blast digivolving, which comes up on occasion, not commonly, however. But the reason that I think that these are actually really impactful is, again, for things like the mirror. I think that these two are some of the best Digimon in the mirror to see in your opening hand, and the reason I think that is because they both immediately answer your opponent's Numemon play while passing them to 1. So you hatch, you digivolve into the back into a rookie, and then you hard play Magna Ace or a Angemon Ace, immediately deleting their level 4. And then they are now at 1, they promote their rookie. Even if it's Uko, it puts them to 2. If it's an Ukomon, they can't digivolve on top of it, meaning that they kind of have to play out another Numemon for 3, passing you to 1 again, which then lets you either go into a Platinum, which Platinum will then let you keep turn, letting you go into a powerful level 7, or going into a Venusmon, which stops all their Digivolutions. I think it's a very, very powerful turn 1 play. And it comes up a lot. And even against other bases, like the purple or red bases, your opponent will never really be able to digivolve on top of their Digimon anyways, so they'll constantly have to be hard playing their level 3s out, and then depending on the level 3 that they played out, as long as it wasn't the Nume X, your opponent having to hard play a Monzaemon will be a lot easier for you to personally answer. I think these cards also have utility against certain other matchups from like red hybrid or more aggressive decks. Keeping your security a little bit topped off feels really, really nice. The downside of the Ace, though, is, once they die, you lose 3 memory, which does come up pretty consistently, especially in a deck that does want to die a lot. But, trade-offs and trade-ons. Still think that these are something that you should consider when building the deck, and you could consider when your opponent is playing against you, and you're against the Numemon player at the table. Okay, next up, we'll kind of go over the Monzaemons. We'll go in order from the worst Monzaemon, in my opinion, which is the BT14. Armor Purge on play by placing 1 card with Numemon in its name from your trash as its bottom Digivolution source, gains 2 memory. And then while this has Monzaemon or Numemon in name, it gains Security Attack +1 as an inheritable. The inheritable for this and the RB1 Monzaemon are the exact same, so I won't go over it when we get to there. But the on play is a little bit different. This Digimon has the benefit of having Armor Purge, which is nice. The Armor Purge has come up before, and since it's an optional effect, it will never truly hurt you. It's only purely beneficial that it's there. But typically, when you very rarely get the bonus of the Armor Purge. I play this card typically over Wormonze, purely because it gains 2 memory. And I valued cheating 2 memory from my opponent during their turn a lot more than I typically value the Digivolve. But that may just be me. That may just be me. Going into the next regular Monzemon, we've got the RB1 Monzemon, which is the exact same as the BT14 Monzemon, but it just has another effect for no reason. On play, when digivolving, one of your opponents gets minus 3 KDP and gains security attack minus 1 until the end of the turn, which is insane in the mirror. It's insane in a lot of matchups. Anywhere from just hard playing a Monzemon, giving security attack minus to an OTK deck can just fully stop them from killing you, giving minus 1 sec to any card while you have a Venusmon on play in play, protects the Venusmon from it, as well as stops them from getting when attacking with digivolving effects, which is super impactful. And 3k DP minus, it kills off floodgates before you actually have to deal with them. When you on play the Monzemon for free, or using for the play cost of 7, you can choose to give the minus 3k DP to a memory blocker before actually trying to gain the memory, which I think is super impactful. Other very noticeable things is that for all of the Monzemons, including the War, being able to put the Nume X underneath makes it so that way you're insulated again from getting deleted, because you'll be able to play out another Numemon, which is very nice. And the DP thresholds are also very noticeable. Being able to give my 6k DP to a Digimon is a lot easier than being able to give minus 7k in total. As well as a lot of the thresholds that your level 5s will be meeting will put you over the 5k DP minus of the Rune mode, or the 4k DP minus of the Fanglong, which is very nice. It forces them to put 2 cards back instead of just 1, as long as you have a single Monzemon. And if that Monzemon has on deletion, and you have Platinum and Trash, it forces them to then put 3 cards away instead of 2, because your Platinum is just over that threshold, but we'll go into that when we get to the Platinum in just a second here. This is the best Monzemon, and so your opponent will usually be playing them at 4, followed up by, I think, tied for the best Monzemon is the Monzemon X Antibody. Can digivolve over black or yellow Digimon, so it doesn't have to be specifically on top of the Monzemons to get the effect, but you can also digivolve on top of a Digimon with Monzemon in name without the X Antibody trait, so you can't digivolve on top of the Monzemon X for a cost of 0. When digivolving, if a card Monzemon or X Antibody is in this Digimon's Digivolution cards, you can play 1 Numemon or level 3 Digimon card from your hand without paying the cost. This is how you usually cheat out Pillowmons or any of your Numemons, try and get value from it. Notice that it says play 1 Numemon specifically, so you cannot play Numemon X Antibody using this effect, nor can you play Platinums using this effect. It can only be one of the other regular Numemons. And then all turns, when one of your Digimon is played, one of your opponent's Digimon gets minus 2k DP for the turn until the end. Not for the turn. For each of your Digimon until the end of the turn. So usually when this comes out, your opponent will get around minus 6k DP, which is why I said the Monzemon threshold of being 7 was really nice, because it requires them to have another way to actually get that minus 1k onto it. So yeah, the average is about 6k DP minus, but your opponent can go very wide in order to get, I've seen upwards of 16 or 18k DP minuses, especially against cards like Quartzmon that don't really deal with your bodies, but kind of just keep them there. This card is super nice for cheating out some of the BT14 Numemon to get the extra rush lethal, or just cheating out a Floodgate to pass your turn on, as well as using a Protoform will let you digivolve it into it for 2, still getting the effect. I think overall this card is really strong and also really good. So expect 4 of these, 4 of the RB1 Monzemon, and then some combination of BT14 and BT15 War Monze, and your opponent may be on the Magna or the Angewomon. But probably these ones are a bit more tech and less likely, whereas some combination of the BT14 and the War Monze are much more likely. Especially the War Monze, I would say they're a little bit more high. People play a little bit more of these than they do of the BT14 version. So you'll probably see 2 of these and 0 of these, or 1 and 1. Is my experience. That's the level 5s. moving on to level 6s, we've got the start of the show, Platinum. On play, when digivolving by trashing one card with Numemon in its name. In your hand, gain 2 memory. So this can trash any of the Numemons, including Platinum itself. And then on deletion, you play one level 5 Digimon card with Numemon, or level 5 or lower Digimon card with Numemon or Monzemon in its name from your hand without paying the cost. This can play out any of your Monzemons or Numemons, does not matter if they're X antibody or not. The Monzemon X antibody usually doesn't get too much value, but if you play out with the Platinum first and then you Nume X, the Monzemon X antibody will then be able to do this on your opponent's turn, which can hurt a lot, so it's something that you should keep in mind, as well as it can play out any of the Monzemons just in general, so gaining 2 memory consistently here, gaining 2 memory and security minus and minus 3k DP feels really good, and then de-digivolving, and then also stopping your 5 cost or less from attacking also comes up pretty consistently. And this card is always almost able to be played out for free from trash using the Numemon X antibody, and then playing out a Monzemon to then put the Numemon X antibody underneath it, and then when that Digimon is deleted, playing out the Platinum again. So it's a very cyclical loop, and it's something that you should be understand that your opponent is playing a minimum of 3, but I play 4 personally, so I love seeing this card. Up next is, I think, the most common level 6 that you'll see your opponent playing, aside from Platinum, which is Venus. When digivolving, all of your opponent's Digimon gain security attack -1 until the end of your opponent's turn, which means that your board will be getting this. So any Digimon that you play or push out from breeding will also be affected by this effect. And then during your opponent's turn, all of your opponent's Digimon will security attack anything. So even if you have a plus and a minus and it brings you back to neutral, it still counts as you having that security attack, so it doesn't matter. If you digivolve into a Digimon with security attack plus, this effect immediately goes into place. And if you have security attack minus for whatever other reason, this effect is also constantly in place, but it's only useful on your opponent's turn. So if I digivolve into Venus and then attack into you, and you ace digivolve into, say, then Zulongmon, these Zulongmon will still get its effect. So here, all of your opponent's Digimon with security attack minus can't attack this Digimon specifically. So if even if it's suspended, you can't attack it. And when attacking or when digivolving effects cannot activate. It's a very, very strong floodgate. The -1 security attack is only for the end of your until the end of your turn, but the overall stun is always active. So if they digivolve into another Venus or into a way to give you minus security attack again, that effect is always active. I think this card is very, very strong. You can usually expect your opponent to be running 2 to 4 of these, but I've seen some lists playing 0 Venus Mons, and these ones are usually aggressive lists, more aggressive lists. So if you never see any Venus Mons whatsoever, or you see like a very aggressive play style or just a very aggressive like bottom end from your opponent, you can usually expect them to be playing little to no Venus Mons in their list. Next up, we've got Numemon. Speaking of ways to give your opponent security attack minus, this card in tandem with the Venusmon is game winning most of the time, but we're going to explain why. So when digivolving or when attacking, once per turn, by trashing the top card of your security stack, you may play one yellow level 4 or lower card from your hand without paying the cost. Digimon played by this effect gain rush for the turn. This includes your Numemon and your Pillowmons if you're playing any of those. Otherwise, there's no other good yellow level 4s to be playing out with that effect. But by trashing the top card of security, you may play one level 4, so they can still trash when digivolving and when attacking without having anything to play, which may seem bad, but we'll get to why maybe that's very important and impactful. All turns, all of your opponent's yellow Digimon gain Barrier. Barrier protects you from battle specifically, so if you have an option that deletes, it doesn't protect you from that, but your smaller Digimon that usually will be deleted in security or through swinging in and getting blocked can be protected by trashing the top card of your security. And that includes your Venus and Mitama, which is very, very nice. And then opponent's turn, similar to Venus's effect, all of your opponent's Digimon with levels greater than or equal to the total cards of both players' security stacks gain -2 security attack. So the idea, from my experience, is that you would go into Venusmon, and then try to cheat out a Monzemon or getting the Monzemon in some way. So that way the Venus essentially stuns your opponent. They can't really do too much. And then going into the Numemon, Hopefully, by this point, if you're playing somewhat aggressively and you're playing against a somewhat aggressive deck, which is what typically Numemon is useful against, they're very useful against like Red Hybrid or against decks like Numemon or things the like, who may try to check you down very, very quickly. Being able to just constantly have a security attack -2 on their field, I think beats most decks. Decks that can still get around it are like Leviamon with their on-play, very strong on-play Levias, or their very strong option cards like Biting Crush or Seventh Lightning, which will come up. But against more aggressive decks, if you're having a really hard time with them, Numemon may be a really cute card to play against them. Even without the Venus, it's still a security attack -2, which will slow them down pretty heftily. But again, keep in mind, this only works if your opponent, on level 3s, if your opponent has 3 security and you have 0, or some combination split between the 3 of you there. So it's not super useful in that capacity, but against level 5s and up, it can definitely come up pretty consistently. But that aside, I think this card is a bit more niche, and so you probably won't see this against too many opponents. I think I'm the only one that's even like considered testing this card, and I think that from my testing, there are certain matchups where it is game winning and certain matchups where it's completely useless. So keep that in mind. Up next, we have another yellow Digimon, but this one adds a little bit of green to the mix. We have Quantumon. When Digivolving, by placing one Digimon at the top of your opponent's security stack, reveal all of your opponent's security cards and place one card among them at the top of your opponent's deck. Shuffle the rest and return them to the security stack. And then start of your opponent's turn, declare one card category, then reveal the top card of your opponent's deck. If that card is the declared category, this Digimon isn't affected by the effects of that card category for the turn. Then return the revealed cards to the bottom or top of the opponent's deck, which is really nice when it comes to trying to prevent your opponent from top decking something actually super impactful. Because that means they have to top deck the card and then top deck the next card again. That will let them win. This card becomes infinitely better if you know not only what your opponent is playing, but how they kind of want to play and what their goals are. So keep that in mind. It being yellow-green is very, very nice because it lets you go into, I think, almost every single one of your powerful level 7s, which is really good. And it's just a really hard body to get rid of. Being immune to Digimon effects or options effects or tamer effects can be devastating for certain decks. So just keep that in mind. It is a 5-cost Evo though, so it is a little rough. I think between Venus and Quanto, these are the 2 most likely level 6s to see an opponent playing. But I think Venus is a little bit more popular than Quanto. But this card also was used in the top 4 list for the most recent tournament, so it may see a spike in popularity. There's one Digimon that I actually forgot to add into the list here, so we'll just go over it really quickly. Azulongmon. It's a on-play when Digivolving, return one of your opponent's level 5 or lower Digimon to the hand, then unspin one of your Digimon with Deva, 4 Great Dragons, or 4 Sovereigns traits. And then on deletion, delete one of your opponent's Digimon with the highest level. This card comes up if he has BT14 Numemon underneath it, and you have a Monzemon in play. Being able to bounce level 5 can come up pretty consistently, especially in like the mirror, or in matchups against like the Leviamon sometimes. Very rarely though, because typically when they're attacking, they're already going to Digivolve in that moment. So. And this card I think is a little bit less useful than the typical level 6. I put it probably a little bit above Numemon when it comes to just general application, but I think Numemon has better uses in decks where it's good, whereas this one is kind of just more generic in its utility. The on deletion is really nice, so even though you'll give your opponent 4 memory, being able to delete one of your opponent's Digimon with the highest level is super, super impactful. Especially against decks like, again, Leviamon, where, yes, they'll trade this for typically like 4 or 5 memory. I'm not sure exactly the order of which the Leviamon would see this Digimon get deleted or not. I think it would depend on if it's your turn. If it's your turn, I think it would you would be able to delete the Digimon, the Leviamon, if it's the highest level before your opponent would get the memory. Whereas I think if it's their turn, they would get the memory, and then you would delete your opponent's Digimon. So they'll gain 5 on their turn or 4 on yours, which is fine. And these cards, okay. Moving on into the last set of Digimon, we've got 5 level 7s that you can expect to see some quantity of. I think these are the most realistic ones, but there are some weird ones that I may bring up towards the end of this. We'll see. First up, Quartzmon can Digivolve on top of Quanto and on top of the Platinum. For those of you who don't know what Quartzmon says, it's a Digivolve for 6 from a green, black, white, or for 9 from a level 5 with save in the card text. Suspend all of the Digimon and Tamers on the field, and then for every 2 suspended Digimon or Tamers, gain 1 memory. And then all turns other than this Digimon, all Digimon and Tamers do not unsuspend. Suspend one of your opponent's Digimon or Tamers, then trash the top card of your opponent's security stack for every 5 cards suspended and for every 5 suspended Digimon or Tamers. So that would count for both fields. Typically, you'll be trashing like 1. If your opponent's also playing a very good wide deck, you'll be trashing like 2 or 3 cards, which feels really good. And so if your opponent's also playing a very good wide deck, this card will probably also keep turn for you, which is nice. This card is like a very big panic button typically. It's not necessarily game-winning against the majority of decks, but it is something that kind of just goes, whoa, let's chill out for a turn. I'm not comfortable anymore. And typically you could even have a Numemon X underneath the stack, so even if your opponent deletes it, you can then get like the Platinum that you Digivolve on top of right back, and they still have to deal with all their stuff being suspended, but all of your stuff is now unsuspended, so it feels pretty okay. Up next, we've got Death Xmon. When you would play this card, reduce the memory cost by 3 for each Digimon and Tamer your opponent has in play. On play or when Digivolving, de-Digivolve 1 all of your opponent's Digimon, then delete all of your opponent's Digimon level 4 or lower Digimon. Delete all of your opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon, and then end of your opponent's turn, delete all of your opponent's Digimon with the lowest play cost. This card is able to Digivolve on top of your Platinum, or you can just play it out for cheap, depending on the kind of list your opponent is on. If your opponent is on like Numemon or another go wide deck and they aren't conscious of this, they'll typically lose to it. But if your opponent is a good Numemon player, typically they won't play into Death X to any meaningful capacity, to a point where even if you play it and you pass turn by playing Death X for let's say 5, putting them to 3, your opponent will still probably be able to push through and have a very strong board, either killing you or passing it back to you in a way that the Death X doesn't really feel meaningful. But it being able to Digivolve makes it at least still somewhat useful in matchups where you maybe wouldn't be able to play it for cheap. Being able to Digivolve feels, again, really good, especially a board-wide Digivolve. Digivolve into a wiping of all level 4s. Feels really, really nice. Up next is, in my opinion, the best level 7. That has utility against almost every deck in the format right now, and even the decks that it has kind of like lower utility against, it still is impactful. So Shrine Greymon Rune Mode is when Digivolving or on deletion until the end of your opponent's turn. Next turn, all of your opponent's Digimon get minus 5,000 DP. So this stops on plays of like the Numemons and stuff in like the mirror, or on plays of like any rookies for searching, which makes it super, super valuable. Your opponent can't push up at all, which feels really nice. And then end of attack, delete this Digimon and one of your opponent's Digimon, then recover 1. Then you have a Tamer in play, hatch 1 Digi-Egg card to an empty space in your breeding area. The typical line of play is hatch, Digivolve in the raising, Digivolve into a Shrine Greymon Ruin mode, give minus 5k to your opponent, stopping them from pushing up from their breeding area, and also typically deleting the stuff on their field. Then they will probably Digivolve in the back to a 6k DP or higher Digimon. You will swing in with the Shrine Greymon after promoting, recovering 1, and then if you have a Tamer in play, hatching a Digi-Egg to immediately start Digivolving in the back again. And if you do have a Numemon X antibody underneath, the on deletion will also trigger to play out usually the Platinum that again was played underneath this Digimon. This does eat up the Platinum Digivolution on deletion, which is can feel bad, but overall I think it is still good. I think it's disgustingly good. And then up next we have Omnimon's Word Defeat. This is purely for Tamer hate. I don't think Tamer Hate is super impactful in this current meta. I think it's fine. Its security effect comes up interspertently. It's fine again. And the on deletion deleting one of your opponent's Digimon plays really, really nicely, specifically into Levia, because even though the Levia will delete your Zord defeat, either using the Levia X or just regular Levia deleting your highest level, you will then usually trade board for it, which can feel fine in the Numemon deck, especially since a lot of your Digimon do dodge the Levia X's effect, so insulating your Digimon, assuming, let's say, your opponent swings in with Levia, they check an Omnimon Zord defeat, they have to either choose if they want to Digivolve into the X now, or if they want to dodge the X effect. A lot of the times your opponent will, just not think and Digivolve into the X will delete your Zord, maybe a 3 and maybe a Manze, and if they do, you'll delete the Levia X, and then they can't actually get the bonuses of the extra checks, so they stop at 1 check, which feels pretty good. The Tamer deletion doesn't come up often, unfortunately, and it is only able to Digivolve on top of your Platinums. So your Venuses or your Quants or your Mitamas or any other hypothetical level 6s you want to be playing in this deck will not be able to get any value from it. I think this one is definitely one of the more niche ones, and your opponent, most Numemon players probably will not be playing this unless Tamers become a lot more prevalent in the current meta. And then the final level 7 we have here is the Merciful mode. You can Digivolve for 3 on top of the Omnimon. So again, if your opponent was playing Zord defeats, this is another option to do, and it actually adds an extra effect to the Omnimon Merciful mode, which it will, instead of deleting 1, will delete 2 of your opponent's Digimon, because that is now 2 Megas underneath it, and then you can place 10 cards from your opponent's trash at the bottom of their deck in any order, and start your turn, trash this card to then trash top card of your opponent's security stack. This card, I think, is exceptionally powerful in this current meta, because it dodges all on deletions, which is really, really nice. If you pop your opponent's Platinum with a Nume X underneath it, you can then place that Platinum and Nume X on the bottom of their deck, which is what you typically want to do anyways, which will stop them from getting their on deletions. And the reason that works is the same reason why Shine Greymon stops on plays, is because the card that triggered the effect has to be in the same place that it triggered the effect in order to actually resolve properly. So it stops any on deletions, typically, even so against Heavy Loader or against Bird Deck or against like some weird draw stuff that just Purple has in general, or Mega Dramon can all kind of stop that, which is good. And its Grave Hate, which is also super impactful against the Mirror, against Levia, and potentially against Red Hybrid, stopping them from being able to Digivolve into Warp Digivolve into the Emperor. All of those things can kind of come up to an extent, which is very nice. It also helps against Luga in the sense that you can put back a bunch of their level 4s and level 3s, stopping them from being able to play impactfully by effect. Combination of level 7s that you'll usually see. You'll probably start seeing a little bit more Quartzmon, especially because it topped recently. Death X I think is very common as well. Shrine Greymon is very common, and the Merciful mode is probably going to be a bit more common since it was topped with the Quartzmon in combo, whatever. I personally run 2 and 1, but I'll probably maybe run 1, 1, and 1. The Quartzmon feels fine, the Shrine Greymon Rimos feel fine, and the Omnimon Merciful mode feels fine. I'm not a big fan of the Death X or the Zord defeats, but I think that Death X is common enough that you should be cognizant of it when playing against Numemon nonetheless. But I think the 3 that you should definitely be watching out for consistently are Merciful mode, Ruin mode, and Quartzmon. Your opponent is playing minimum 1 of these, typically 2 some combination, and if they're insane, they're playing 3 to 4 of these in some combination. But that is it for the Digimon. Moving on to the last set of things, we have the options and the tamers that you can expect to see your opponent be playing in some tandem. Or some combination. Okay, starting off with the black option cards. we have Cooties Kick. When you would use this card, if you have a black tamer in play, reduce the play cost by 1, so it can be played for a cost of 1, which is nice. Main, until the end of your opponent's turn, one of your Digimon with Numemon, Sukumon, or Nanimon, or Edamon in its name can't be blocked and gains on deletion, gain 3 memory. This is a nice way to kind of cheat through blocker, as well as gives your already strong on deletions an extra 3 memory gain. So if you have a Nume X and it gets deleted, you'll gain 3 memory and then play out a Platinum, which can then gain you 2 extra memory, noting for a total net gain of 4 memory at the best scenario, or just 3 memory if you do not have a tamer already in play. Its security effect is to reveal top 3 cards of your deck. You may play 1 black Digimon card with a play cost 3 or less among them without playing the cost, trash the rest. This is nice because it can set up your trash for you a little bit, as well as if you're playing the black base, which is what you'll typically be playing with the black option. It will play out any of your Numemon, because they're all 3 costs or less, or any of your rookies, besides the Ukomon, which is nice. It's convenient. It makes it so that way it's a somewhat active security card. Metal Cannon. Choose one of your Digimon with X antibody in its traits, then draw 1 for each that Digimon's Digivolution cards. This will typically come up with Monze X, less so with the Nume X's, but if you protoform into a Nume X for 1 on top of a rookie, that is still a net of 3 draws. So for 3 memory, you draw 1 off the evolution, and then 3 off of Metal Cannon. But the typical one that I've seen people play this on is the Monze X, which is typically, if the stack is whole and you have a protoform, it's a Numemon, protoform, Monzemon, so a net 3. And if it's an insane stack, and they're really trying to get some value out of the Metal Cannon, it's a protoform, egg, rookie, Numemon, Monzemon, for a total of 5 draws of the Metal Cannon. I think this card is okay. The security effect is added to hand. I'm going to be completely upfront with you. A lot of these options are super niche. Most Numemon decks do not play any options, but these are just ones that I've tested out or have played with or played against in testing against either randoms or my friends. So keep that in mind when I'm going through. I will note which ones are the most popular and the ones that I've actually seen more consistently. This one is a very inconsistent one, and there's also not much you can really do about it rather than just trying to strip sources or delete your opponent's stuff. So this one isn't something I would worry too much about. The Cooties Kick is something that I've seen. It has Numemon on the cover art, so you know people are going to try playing it in Numemon deck. I don't think it's that good, but it has come up. Trident Arm is another one that I've seen come up. Main, Digivolve 3, one of your opponent's Digimon. Then until the end of your opponent's turn, one of your opponent's Digimon gains start of your main phase Digimon attacks. Security, Digivolve 3, one of your opponent's Digimon. I have seen this card come up a good amount. It was this and Heaven's Judgment that actually sparked a very long discourse between me and a couple other players over which one is better. The security effect of Digivolve 3, one of your opponent's Digimon. This is a game-winning effect if it's hit in your security. It absolutely destroys a lot of what your opponent kind of wants to do. And forcing them to attack at start of main means that you can... it's essentially a way that you delete a Digimon. It's a little bit more... Sorry about that. It's a little bit more difficult than just 6 cost delete a Digimon. But it gets around deletion effects, which is nice, especially in the mirror, as well as it can Digivolve a Levia X down into a Leviamon or into level 5, then into the level 5 or the level 4, and then down into the level 4 into the level 3, and then forces that level 4, level 3, or another one of their Digimon to immediately swing into security, which is really nice. This actually comes up too against things like Gatsumon and Pillowmon that are stopping you from playing if you have no way of actually deleting it with one of your DP minus effects, being able to try to arm one of your opponent's bigger Digimon and then forcing one of the Pillowmon to gain the immediately attack, essentially consigns it to death 100% of the time if you have blocker, and most of the time if you have any security left. So keep that in mind. We're going to skip the X antibody protoform. We'll come back to that. We have a Revelation of Light. when an effect trashes this card from security, activate its security effects. In the main, search your security stack. You may play one level 4 or lower Digimon card among them without paying the cost, then shuffle your security attack. If you have a Kari in Tamer in play, place this card on top of your security stack. In the security, all of your opponent's Digimon and security Digimon get minus 5k DP until the end of the turn. You will never really be trashing it. It's mainly there as a way of playing out your Numemon for 4, which is fine. It's just an extra memory, and it doesn't really do much. The main gimmick that I've seen with it is hoping that it's in your security, or trying to cheat into your security. The deck that was playing it was playing the Magnamon and the Angelmon aces. So the recovery effects were trying to put a lot more of the security affecting cards like the Chikuris and the Dorus into the security, so that way they get the bonuses off of them. And if you hit it in security, it's just a ruin mode. It's just a ruin mode. It's a Valkamon. It's so strong. It's very, very strong if you hit it in security. But the main effect isn't super impactful with this deck, and I think that unless you build around it, it's probably not going to be super useful. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. Now, if your opponent starts hard dropping fucking level 5 yellow aces, you may need to watch out. You may need to watch out and consider this, but overall, it doesn't usually come up. Going next, we got Blinding Rays. I've seen people playing Blinding Rays as a way of meeting their thresholds. So the idea is kind of Digivolving for 3, going to 0 into a Monzaemon, and then Blinding Ray for 2, Digivolving in for 3 into a Platinum. Platinum effect, gain 2, putting yourself to 1, and then going into one of your powerful level 5s, which feels nice. Other ways you can kind of do it is if you have the RB1 Numemon in play, being able to Blinding Ray in order to get the memory in order to Digivolve into a Monzaemon and then Digivolve into a Venus also feels really strong. It's a little bricky, and because of the kind of sources and the way that we play, the yellow source is a little bit difficult to grab a lot of the times. But should this card ever come down, it does feel really, really impactful. It will let you cheat out a Venus or a Ruin mode a lot quicker, or even a Quartz a lot quicker, which is nice. It doesn't help us beyond that fact, and I think this deck is quick enough that I typically would not run it, but I can see people who do run it. And I've seen it enough that I think it's worth a mention. And then finally, Heaven's Judgment, I think, is the best option, in my opinion, of all of the options that we've mentioned so far. 7 costs. While you have a green Digimon or Tamer in play, you may use this card without meeting the color requirements. The color requirements do come up where it will sometimes shaft you, but you play enough yellows as a top end that it will be live most of the time. And then main, you can activate the effect below for each color in your Digimon, activate it again. So if you have a yellow Digimon in play, it is a minus 12k DP to a single target, or minus 6 to 2 individual targets, which is really good. If you have a black and yellow, like say a Platinum, it is now a minus 18k DP, or some combination of 6, 6, 6, 12, 6, some kind of combination there. And the final one is if you have an Ukamon in play, plus a black and a yellow, that is a minus 24k DP to your opponent's board in any combination in orders of 6,000 DP, which is disgusting. It is so strong and good. Your opponent hitting it in security also comes up a lot, which is security. One of your opponent's Digimon gets minus 12k DP for the turn. That will delete most things, and the things that it doesn't delete, they will usually die in security. Hitting a Leviathan, putting it to 1k. If this is the first check, the second check, they will almost certainly die. Against a majority of decks, giving minus 12k DP to any of their Digimon can usually save you or heavily punish them, letting you take back tempo, and just hard playing it for 7 doesn't feel bad when you're doing it for minus 8k DP to minus 24k DP consistently. That will clear your opponent's board almost every time. So even though you're passing them to 7 and they can try to rebuild, you drop a Heaven's Judgment and it's game winning. It's a broken ass card, and I'll just leave it at that. And then the final option, I think, is one that I've had the most discourse with, where I think you either love this card or you fucking hate it. So Protoform says, while you're Digimon, you may ignore its color requirements, this card's color requirements. So it's an omnicolor card essentially, as long as you have a Digimon, and that's the only time you would ever use it. So you can just always treat it as if it's an omnicolor card. Security, you add this card to hand. Very nice. It doesn't have the memory gain effect like the other one, but for good reason. Main, one of your opponent's Digimon without the X antibody in its Digivolution cards may Digivolve into a Digimon card with the X antibody trait in your hand, with the Digivolution cost reduced by 1, and then if you did reduce it by 1, place this card as the bottom Digivolution card. This lets you go into Monze X's for 2 and into your Nume X's for 1, or even just placing it underneath as a way of getting some resource loop going. So the -1 to Digivolution comes up occasionally. I would say it comes up decently enough, where I was running this card at 2 for a point because it was essentially another copy of Monzemon, when I couldn't find a regular bear in order to get the effect of the Monzemon X consistently. And then the inherited effect is the controversial one. It's the one why people hate it or why people love it when they're running it with Numemon specifically. All turns, when this Digimon would leave the battle area, other than by one of your effects, from the Digimon's Digivolution cards, return one Digimon card to the hand and place one X antibody at the top of security stack. So, what this means is, it checks before you would leave the field. So before deletions, before anything else, if your Digimon is going to leave the field, you can activate the Protoform, which is a mandatory effect of adding one Digimon card to hand and then one X antibody to top of security stack. So what I mean by that is there are a couple stacks where this has anti-synergy with your game plan. For example, if you Protoform a Numemon into a Numemon X for 0, and you just want the Protoform underneath, and you swing into security, and the Numemon X dies, the Protoform will go to top of security, the Numemon will go to hand, and then the Numemon would try to get deleted. And because it no longer has an X antibody or Numemon in sources, it will just still get deleted with no effect. So it will not float into something else. Other scenarios where it fucks you are Monzemon X antibody. If you have a Numemon X, a Protoform, and a Monzemon X antibody, the Numemon X will get added to hand, and the Protoform will go to top of security before the on deletions would happen, meaning that you don't get the on deletion of the inheritable from the Numemon X antibody. So I can understand why people don't like this card. However, I think that Protoform is disgusting against certain matchups, against a lot of matchups, against almost every matchup. I love seeing it. As long as your hand isn't exceptionally bricky, you can just Digivolve it for 2, which makes 2 a threshold rather than consistently having 3 as a threshold. As well as it acts as a Monzemon for your Monzemon X antibodies, or it's a way to continuously get value off your Nume X's. And what I mean by that is Digivolving on top of a rookie into your Nume X, and then Digivolving into one of your level 5s from there. It makes it so that way, even if you only have one memory, you can still keep turn and then go into a Monzemon, which feels really, really impactful. And when that card is deleted, you can just add the rookie instead of adding the Nume X, and then the Monzemon will then get the on deletion of the Nume X. This card is requires you to use your brain a little bit. It's not too hard to use, but requires you to use your brain a little bit, so that way it isn't it doesn't have any anti-synergies with you. But if you're just using it very willy-nilly without thinking, it can hurt your combos. I think that's something that you should be cognizant of when adding it to your deck list, as well as when using it. I still think it's exceptionally good. I think adding it to hand from security and constantly adding an extra security check feels fantastic. And being able to add back Numemons, Monzemons, Venuses, Platinums, Rookies from your stack that would be deleted lets you keep up a really tight resource engine, making your loop even more powerful. But that's just my opinion. I can understand why some people don't run it, but I think that it's important to keep in mind that your opponent may run 1 to 2 of these, and this is the most popular of all the options that we've shown here. I think in order it's probably Protoform, Heaven's Judgment, Trident Arm, and then some combination of the others that you probably will realistically never see, but are at least things that you should keep in mind. Protoforms, I think, are ones that you should absolutely keep in mind, and especially if your opponent's stack is weak with their Protoform, being able to punish them for having the Protoform in their stack can be game-winning. Whew! An hour in, and we're on to the final segment of this video. I know we've been yapping a lot, so I'm going to try and get it through as quickly as possible. We have the Black Tamers with Satsuki and the Shu Yulin. So we'll start with the Satsuki. It's able to be played out for free using the BT14 Numemon. It provides jamming, reboot to all of your Nume, Monze, and Digipolice. And then it also gives memory at the start of your main phase if your opponent has a Digimon. It's a good card. Really, really good card, especially because it synergizes really well with your security attack +2 or security attack +1 inheritables from your Monzes. And it comes up pretty consistently. Your opponent is probably playing some combination of these, but there are some lists that do go fully without them. I've seen some lists that just completely forego Satsukis in the BT14, play 4 RB1s instead, and go from there. And I think those are completely valid lists too. I think the BT14 is good as a way to cheat out lethal, but it's not exactly mandatory. And we'll go ahead and explain the next one. The Shu Yulin specifies X antibody and Digipolices. So it works well with your Numemons, your Numemon X antibodies, and your Monzemon X antibodies. Again, the Alliance and Reboot is what's gained. It's a memory setter, which is nice. And that's about it. The idea that I've seen is essentially going, placing this and the Satsuki underneath a Monzemon X antibody, swinging in for 3 checks using Alliance for 1 and the inheritable of the Monzemon underneath for another one, with jamming, and then digivolving into something else, and then detaching these to then have the memory setter and the memory gainer, letting you go to probably 4 on your next turn. Feels really good. Digimon Emperor is really good against the more aggressive variants of the deck, where they try to rookie rush you down. I think it's better against the purple and red variants on average, and then depending on the type of list that your opponent's playing as a black variant, it can also be super strong there. If you ever see 2 Digimon Emperors in a game that are either checked in security or played out before things get too late into the game, you will probably win. It makes it impossible for them to ever push out any amount of the Digimon from raising, which slows down their tempo significantly for reasons that include obviously no more rookies, which is unfortunate, but it's fine because the average deck would be able to play a level 4 into their raising consistently. But if they're not on the black variant, they will never be able to digivolve in raising consistently. And if it's not in Ukomon, they can't even offset some of the loss a little bit. So they will pass over 2. If you put them to 1, they're always passing you to 1. And if you have 2 Digimon Emperors, they're passing you 3 from 1, which is disgusting. It is disgusting. It is a disgusting time. So it completely turns off their level 3s at 2 copies. And it makes it so that way your opponent also will not be able to draw consistently against the Numemon players, because a lot of their draw is stuck in their Sunomons or their GGs or their Koros or their Demimeras or whatever egg they're currently playing, as well as the value they're getting off of those 3s. It comes up somewhat in other matchups, but typically it's a bit weaker against the average deck. Best case scenario, it's a ruin mode in a way where it forces your opponent to digivolve in the raising rather than pushing out. Worst case scenario, your opponent already wants to digivolve in raising, looking at you like Mirage Galgamon, and so you're not actually getting any real benefit from this. But alas. Moving on, we've got Cool Boy. Cool Boy, on play, reveal the top 3 cards of your deck. Add 1 Digimon card with X antibody in its traits and 1 option card with X antibody in its traits among them to your hand. Place the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order. Then your turn, when one of your Digimon digivolves into a same level Digimon with X antibody in its traits, you may suspend this tamer to gain 1 memory and draw 1. This card is new, hot off the press, spicy tech that I didn't even consider. I knew that we were playing it in other decks recently, but I did not consider it in the Numemon deck until very, very recently, where someone was playing it was in the most recent 4th place list. They were playing the Agumon X antibodies, the Numemon X's, and the Monzamon X's as targets, plus I think maybe a Protoform or 2, and they played this instead of the Satsukis. And this card is really, really nice. Consistent draw, something we care something we care about a lot. Memory, putting us closer to that 3 cost threshold, so that we can keep turn when we digivolve into Monzays or play Numes. And then it searches your really powerful Digimon, being the Monzai X's and the Nume X's. So that way, even if it misses, as long as you ever find those and you're able to get the value off of them that you want, very impactful, super strong. And if you do hit, it's warping. It's also a really good turn 1 play, where being able to put your opponent to 2 rather than just hard playing a Numemon for 3 in the mirror specifically is super, super good, and I like it a lot. And being able to keep turn by playing a Cool Boy for 2 and then passing for 3 with other effects, searching for your super powerful Nume X's that will then insulate you on your opponent's turn most of the time, feels fantastic. I mean, this card is something that I will definitely be playing with during tonight's tournament, which is recorded Friday, the 22nd of March. So if you're interested, I do play Digimon tournaments, typically Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays, and sometimes on Sundays for online tournaments, as well as I will try to stream any regional or Ultimate Cup pursuits I go into. So by all means, check that out. Give me a follow and a like on my YouTube channel and on my Twitch channel. You know, like and subscribe to YouTube, follow, and fucking do the whole shit on Twitch. Hugs and kisses there. And then the final tamer we have, after that little advert, is Louie. Louie, 3 cost, white tamer. You may play move one of your level 3 or higher Digimon from your breeding area to your battle area. And then when one of your Digimon moves from the breeding area to the battle area, by spending this Digimon, gain 1 memory. This is the best turn 1 play against the mirror, but it's pretty bad against most other decks, and I'll kind of explain why. Louie is a great way to cheat out lethal. It works the same way as like Satsuki and the Numemon does, but for the Satsuki and the Numemon, you require both those cards specifically in name to be able to be played out from trash for free using for the Numemon, and the Satsuki has to be in hand, or the Numemon also has to be in hand when you play out with the Satsuki in hand to gain the rush effectively, whereas the Louie just requires any level 3 Digimon and a egg in raising to kind of push out. The idea of Ukamon and then playing a Louie, putting your opponent to 1, you don't actually get the hatch next turn because you will not keep turn, which feels bad, and your Numemons are still 3 costs to play. So unless your opponent puts you to 3, so they have to spend 4 memory, you're not going to be able to play out the Numemon. Your Ukamon is sitting out there doing nothing again, and you aren't able to actually gain any good value off of the Louie. The reason it's good in the mirror is because if you put your opponent to 1, their typical turn 1 play is probably going to be playing out a Numemon for 3 after placing a rookie and raising, putting you to 2, and then you can comfortably play out a Numemon for 3 and a rookie and raising, putting them back to 1. So that way, even if they go into a Monzaemon, they have to choose of deleting the Louie or deleting the Uko. And if they delete the Uko, they pass turn over to you to 2. You'll gain a memory off of the Louie. You'll go into your Monzaemon, typically go into a Monzai X, which will then place out a rookie, which is nice. Or if you have Protoform in hand, you can Protoform. You can play out a rookie for 3, going to 0, then Protoform into a Monzai X, and then Monzai X will actually delete their level 5, completely stealing tempo back from them again. But that's best case scenario. Just good scenarios in general are Monzemon minus 3k into Monze X, deleting their level 5. That way, I think is the other like best case scenario. If you just have a Monze X or a Monzemon, you can still Digivolve into it, deleting their rookie potentially, or going into a level 6 like Venus, which will then stop their own Venus, stop their Platinum, stop their Ruins, stop their Quants, stop their Quartz, stop their everything, which I think is fine. But this card is exceptionally good for cheating out lethal, and because of the way that Ukomon works, being able to cheat out extra memory with this card also feels really, really impactful. So I think these are all things that you should consider. The order of which I think people are playing these tamers right now, I think, are probably Louis and Satsuki at like some combination of like 2 and 2, 3 and 3. There, the Shu Yulin I think is the least common, followed by the Digimon Emperor, and then I think Cool Boy will be seeing a meteoric rise in the coming days as people start playing them a lot more. I know I'm going to be trying them out in different combinations going forward, just to see how things go. I think that trying to just accomplish your game plan is the best way to play this deck typically. But yeah, if you have any questions or think I left out any card, because technically, you know, there are cards that you can Digivolve into. I think these are ones that I've seen, or at least are somewhat realistic to be played, or even hypothetically realistic to be played in some weird fucking universe. But maybe I forgot something. Or maybe I didn't go into enough detail of why you may be wanting to play Kui's Kick, or maybe why you want to play Metal Cannon, or maybe you guys are like, well, I don't know about the RB1 Monzemon, dude. I'm not very sold on it, you know? Let me know in the comments. Feel free to ask. I try very hard to get back to you guys within a reasonable time frame. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.